Welcome into Wildcat Monthly. Jordan Woodruff with you. Usually we're doing the Coach's Corner, but we're in the summer, so we're transitioning and talking a little bit about some of the changes that are happening here at Ponca City Public Schools. And joining me today is, I guess we can call it superintendent in waiting in a way, because July 1st is the official first day for Adam Leaming. Good to have you along.
Well, thank you. Yeah, superintendent in waiting. I guess I'm waiting for the board to escort me down the aisle and the coronation ceremony, but we haven't had one of those yet. So
well, with Shelley making the transition to where she's going, I would imagine though you've already been doing quite a bit because she's been out. So I mean, it's kind of like even though it's still kind of in waiting, you've been doing a lot of the job.
Yeah. So the last 3 weeks, Shelley, has transitioned over to the chamber director position, and someone's got to be here to make those decisions and keep the district running. So that's fallen on to me, and we've kind of taken that step forward in what we're trying to do with the district and how we're moving forward. So yeah, last 3 weeks I've been running it.
Yeah, and our goal with this is going to be hopefully that we're going to be able to let you get to know Adam a little bit and talk about what he sees with Ponca City Public Schools in the future. So I want to get into the get to know you part because I try to dive deep into your history. Couldn't find any skeletons hiding in the closet, everybody. But I think you graduated from Newkirk.
Yes, sir.
1999. You got your BS from Northwestern Oklahoma State, then Master's from Southwestern Oklahoma State. You started as a sub-teacher, worked your way up to a math teacher, then a principal. You go to assistant principal to principal. Then you have the spill where you're the CEO there for the University Center of Ponca City. So it's been a life really dedicated to education. And did you see yourself, when you graduated Newkirk High School, is that what you wanted to do?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Jordan, and I talk to people about this all the time. My kind of progression through college was I really enjoyed the educational experience. I really enjoyed the higher education experience, and I thought, man, I'm going to be a college professor and live in the campus and get going with that. I dipped my toes in that at OSU for a little bit. Didn't really seem to fit my mold during that kind of stage in life I was in. My wife convinced me to take a substitute teaching job just as a kind of a stopgap. And man, it was middle school. I remember first day out, and it was at West Middle School. Barbara Cusick was the principal. She introduced herself, took me to my classroom. And my first day, I was like, wow, this is a lot of fun. Those middle school kids, we had so much fun teaching math. And I thought I found it. This is my calling.
Well, and when did that transition into thinking I could be an administrator? So like during that journey, there had to be that point where it's like, hey, I'd like to be an administrator.
That's a great question. At the time, we had the University Center was based out of Conoco at the time, down in the basement. And I thought, I was starting a family and wanted to get kind of dig my roots into the community a little bit. But I thought, man, I need to make a little bit more money to be able to feed my children. So I was like, I'm going to get my degree. Because if you get a master's degree, I think the district paid a whopping like $100 more a month if you had your master's degree. And I was like, man, over a lifetime, that's going to be like thousands of dollars. So I went and got my degree and ended up graduating, about 18 months later. And Barbara Cusick, the principal at West, called and said, hey, our assistant principal is leaving and we'd like you to consider applying for that position. And so I never thought about being a principal or an assistant principal. I just thought this was a great tool to help strengthen my practice and help learn to be a better teacher in the classroom. And I applied, and I remember that time Dr. Pennington, the superintendent then, was on the interviews for it and for that assistant principal at West. And I didn't really, I guess the gravity of that decision didn't really weigh on me at the time. I was just like, I'm happy to be here and wanted to help. And lo and behold, here I was, assistant principal after about 3 years of teaching. So, and then it's just kind of, I luckily have fallen in. I just think, I don't know why people keep thinking that I can do it, but I just keep lucking into this stuff.
Well, I want to go through some of the accolades a little bit that you have. And it's cool. You talk about principal. 2010 Oklahoma's Principal of the Year. That has to be a really cool thing. 2014 got to be a chance of Leadership Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And then you met people, learned a lot through that. Oklahoma Magazine in 2015 said you're top 40 under 40. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, I'm 37. I got 3 years to go. So any advice on that, tell me. But you've been the Ponca Chamber Chair. And then you had, Jim Inhofe asked you to serve on a thing not too long ago as well. So, you have a lot of stuff that's, and even stuff now that you're involved in outside of the school that's really kind of led you, I feel like, to this point, right?
Oh yeah, and I think that the people you meet along your journey, just you never miss an opportunity to just get to know someone, visit with them. I think a lot of those situations just happened organically, where it was not really maybe something that I was just going out after. It just kind of, those accolades just kind of seemed to have followed by just showing up every day and trying to do what's best for kids, moving that. And, it's and an organization this large and education is large. It's so broad and so huge that if you can do a few good things each day, that's going to pay dividends down the road. And I think a lot of those accolades. I had a great team at West when I was a principal and was recognized as Principal of the Year at Oklahoma, and the opportunity to go to DC and be one of the national principals of the year, but unfortunately fell short there on that deal. But and then being recognized by the Journal Record and Oklahoma Magazine as a top 40 under 40, I think that just came about through some of the stuff we were doing at the University Center in Ponca City, and through the chamber here with what we're trying to do with our population, what we're trying to do to help revitalize and bring all these great things back to our community. Right. Just seemed to happen. So it's just been a whirlwind, but it's been awesome.
Well, and during that time, some of that stuff, the University Center, you were there. You went from the school to the University Center, and then back to the school as Executive Director of Ops, and then named Assistant Superintendent of Operations last year, and now you're close to fulfilling being the superintendent. So what was it like to transition to, and then years later transition from back to Ponca City Schools from the University Center?
I think it was, the University Center was a tremendous opportunity. One, it gave me kind of a different perspective of the mission of what we're trying to do in Common Ed. We're always trying to get these students to graduate and be productive citizens, whether that's joining the workforce, going to college, going to career tech, getting a skill. So having that opportunity to be a higher ed leader gave me the opportunity to network with other college presidents across the state of Oklahoma, our chancellor for higher education, and also foster a lot of relationships down at the Capitol, because a lot of that work that impacts education happens down in Oklahoma City each spring. And so now to go back from higher ed to Common Ed, is have those connections, kind of see it from a different perspective, really kind of reinforces what we're trying to do here day in and day out with our younger students to get them ready for that.
All right, so you got some of the background now. Now let's get into some of the questions and that I kind of have for you. First off, since you've been in kind of the, I guess you say, administration role here at Ponca City Public Schools, I think I probably know the answer to this, but it's not good for the broadcaster to do the answer. What do you feel like has been your biggest accomplishment so far with Ponca City Public Schools?
Oh, the very first thing that popped in my mind is, when I first took this job, was they handed me this idea of, we think we can do a bond issue to reinvest in our facilities and schools. How would you, get that out to the community? How would you see these projects come from more of just conceptual ideas to realities? And so within the first 3 months, we created a plan and got that sent out to the voters and had it passed a bond issue, $50 million with bond and $10 million with ESSER, so about a $60 million capital campaign to reinvest in our facilities.
Well, and you look around the state, there's a lot of places that will try to pass bonds, they don't. It was passed here overwhelmingly. So that had to feel really good too, to know that was passed like it did here in the community.
Yeah, and I think it just speaks to our community's commitment to making sure that our students and staff have the facilities that showcase really what our community values.
Yeah.
And that's education, top-notch extracurriculars.
Did you prove something to yourself, crafting and getting that bond to pass?
Yeah, actually looking back on it, passing the bond was probably one of the easier things. Now getting all this stuff built and completed and keep maintaining those promises to the community, that's where the hard, heavy lifting comes in every day.
Well, and you put in for the bond, and then you got to factor in inflation now and everything else, so it does make things tough. And that being said, how do you feel the bonds impacted the school so far, and what are some of the impacts we're going to see here shortly?
Oh, I think right now we've already completed remodels at Union, Washington, Lincoln last summer, and just to see the students and the teachers and Really, if you look at like Union Elementary this past school year, because they had their whole school in the whole interior remodeled. I had the morale with the staff, the way the students loved the facility. I mean, and just our changing neighborhoods. Look at our elementary schools where we put brand new playgrounds at every one of our neighborhood schools. To see families using those in the summertime, I think it just brings some vibrancy to our community, and I think and it helps our staff know that our community values our teachers and values our staff and values what we're trying to do with our kids every school year. So just to be able to see that. Now, you're going to see some incredible, not that those projects weren't incredible, but right now you've got a softball stadium that's going to be top-notch, that's going to be ready to go this fall. A baseball stadium that's going to be top-notch there on 5th Street, really helping that corridor there between Solons and the high school reach a whole new level. The indoor facility, athletic field that we're getting ready to kick off, that's going to be bid this July and ready to start breaking ground in August. So it's just, I mean, with these facilities, we told in the bond these were going to be generational projects, a generational impact on this community. And I stand by it. I think that these are going to be some world-class, top-notch facilities.
Yeah, and with Ponca City kind of, I call it the island, right? I look at Ponca City, Enid, Bartlesville, even Lawton, some of those places that, and there's some places have a little bit more than others, but with Ponca, everything kind of revolves in a way around the school. It's almost, and that's to me what gives it more of a small town type feel a lot of times, because a lot of the stuff that goes on in the community does revolve with what's going on with Ponca City Public Schools.
Absolutely. I mean, the community pride in our school system is up there, and I think that's something that makes my job as superintendent a lot easier, is when your community believes in your school district, is proud to be associated with the school district, and is proud of what we're trying to accomplish each and every day. It makes our job a lot easier on what we're trying to accomplish with our kids in those classrooms.
Certainly so. All right, next thing for you. How has what you've been doing the last few years prepared you for what you're going to be doing now? And also, having Shelley there and really, in a way, being over you, showing you kind of maybe the ropes.
Yeah.
How has she put you in a position to be successful going forward?
Oh, great question, Jordan. So working with Shelley's was an incredibly rewarding experience to have her as superintendent. I mean, you turn around left to right, someone's going to tell you how she's either touched them on a personal level, helped grow them in a professional level, helped take care of their kids, made sure their kids were good. There was no doubt that Shelley believed in our staff, our students. She cared deeply. I mean, she was number one Wildcat supporter from dawn till dusk, and even then in the wee morning hours to take care of us on that. So in the last 2 years, I mean, Shelley has really served as that role model on just giving a real clear expectations on what the demands that this job pulls on you. You know, as the superintendent, you're the figurehead of the school district, and people will turn their eyes to you. You're sometimes the decision maker that's picking between a really hard black and white decision, and there's all these different shades of gray in between that you got to navigate and thread that needle.
Sometimes it's not the right decision; it's just the best of the wrong decisions, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Jordan, and that's where we find ourselves sometimes in this position. But Shelley was a phenomenal mentor. She continues to be a mentor. I mean, one of the things that I told her when we did this transition is it would be such a benefit if she would we had a set aside time every week where we could just sit down and brainstorm and talk, and we've still committed to that and still maintain that, and it's been great.
That's great to hear. Now, this one may be a little harder because naturally you have so much admiration for Shelley and what she's done for you, but also you have your own ideas, you have your own thoughts. So if there's something on the surface, not saying that what was passed was wrong, but you have your own idea of things. So what is maybe something that you will do differently, you think, than what Shelley did? Or is it just one of those things you're going to try to keep the status quo?
You know, I don't know if it's different. I think that she's laid an incredible foundation in a lot of different areas. What I'd like to see this district, and something I'm going to focus on, is we've got some great efforts, some just very, I think in their infancy stages, partnerships with some different entities across the community, whether that's our economic development arm, the Chamber of Commerce, Pioneer Tech, City Arts, Marlins Grand Home. I think we can strengthen and bolster those private-public partnerships. I think our students will benefit from more of a holistic, we get all of these nonprofits involved, we get our business community more involved. things that I think Shelley had laid that foundation for. COVID obviously pulled a lot of that stuff back as we shrunk away. But last year, I think we dipped our toes into the water, and I'm looking forward to carrying and strengthen those in the next coming years.
Okay, next thing. What is something you think Shelley really excelled at that you I'm doing this for you too, Shelley, but what is something you feel like she maybe excelled at that you're going to continue to do, that not just she laid the foundation for, it's something you can't do any better?
Yeah, one of the things she was fantastic with was communication. And, whether you called, emailed, texted, she would have a response back to you within 24 hours. And looking at the breadth of how many people come at you and want to ask questions and all the needs.
So you've seen her emails.
I'm like, wow, how did you do this? And so, that's that. But I know it's a very important thing is that we've got to be a very open, transparent school district. And if I can help communicate and tell people, I see you, I hear you, and here's how we're going to respond, that's going to benefit our school district.
And that kind of leads into something else. There's a guy that does a lot of broadcasting, former coach, Fran Fraschilla. He used to say a good coach is a crisis manager. And I think it's the same way for a CEO of a company, superintendent of a school, coach, whatever it might be, somebody in leadership. Crises come up. Mm-hmm. And how you handle those, I think, really determines a lot of time how effective you are as a leader. So is that, do you go through scenarios in your mind and just kind of think, here's how I would react? Now, it never goes as you think in your mind, but still, you have to prepare for all sorts of things in a position like you are, right?
Oh, yeah. And one of the things I learned as a principal, and I would share this with my other principals that we would train us with, you always plan for the worst, but hope for the best, and you just always have those scenarios, whether that's a safety thing, a severe weather thing, it could be a teacher walkout situation, anything like that. Right. You just think of what wild thing can come in, because you never know day in and day out what that phone's going to ring and what the other problem's going to be on the other side.
And I see it on the sports side. We've had our fair share of things that maybe you got pressed for, good and bad, that you didn't see coming. So, there's all stuff like that. And, everybody's kid, that's their most important thing, right? And you're in charge of creating not just the educational opportunity, but the experiences for the kid as the head and leader of Ponca City Public Schools. So I know that's one of the most important things. I've talked to Shelley about that before. You're always asking yourself in these positions, what is best for the kids, right? That's the main thing. And at the end of the day, you can lay down if you say, I did what's best for the kids.
Yeah. So, we have 4,500 of those kids in this district day in and day out that our parents entrust us to educate them, teach them how to socialize, teach them how to become productive members of society as they graduate. So I think every day, how are we doing that? How are we making sure that the public continues to maintain their trust in what we're doing? And I think that's going to be a lot of just consistent. I like to say, we're going to practice the Wildcat way on and off the field, in and out of the classroom, whether you're a crossing guard or a bus driver or our football coach. We want to be displaying the characteristics of the Wildcat way.
Yep. All right. Broader questions.
Yeah.
What are, you feel like, some of the challenges facing Oklahoma education right now? I know you're very entrenched in the community, not just here at Ponca City, but other things you've done. You've seen it from different angles as well. Think you got past a few hurdles recently, but still, there's a lot of challenges still out there, right, for Oklahoma education?
Yeah, and without a doubt, Ponca City is not immune to the teacher shortage that the state's experiencing right now. It's kind of a nationwide phenomenon. I talked to economic development this morning, and our unemployment rate, good news in Ponca City, is 2.1%. But bad news is that means there's no one really out there that wants to, that if you can work, that doesn't have a job. So, recruiting to Ponca City it's kind of difficult at times because you either have to have a connection or roots here. So I think one of our challenges that I'm working with, and with Shelley now in her chamber position, is how do we position our community as a workforce attractor, as a magnet of workforce across the state. So,
well, there's the challenge. We often don't hear maybe this question as something I wanted to ask, because we hear what's going on with Oklahoma education, all the bad. What are some of the good things, though, going on right now for the state when it comes to educating our Oklahoma kids?
Well, that's a great question. I think one of the first things that came to mind is the OK Career Guide, which is a new new process for 6th through 12th graders that each quarter in our district is taking the lead and running with this. Is each quarter our 6th graders through 12th graders will have some sort of workforce, kind of exploration or some sort of discussion, quiz, test, needs assessment, skills assessments, things like that they can kind of explore and start shaping in their head as they get older. What kind of interest do I have at a post-secondary experience? Am I more tailored to go into the workforce? Do I want to hone my skills into develop a trade or go into higher ed? We locally, Ponca City, with economic development, have partnered with an internship director, which right now, that program is going wild with our high school. We just did it last fall, kind of late. It's kind of solid that, putting boots on the ground on this program was going to be a real benefit for our community. And right now, for the fall semester in August, we have 120 juniors and seniors that say, I want an internship in the fall, which, that's huge for our community. And that's huge for our employers that are looking for a workforce, that we've got to have this mentality of how can we grow our own workforce in this community. And what a great way to connect kids with possible opportunities.
Yeah, and that's a big college thing, right? The internship programs that they have. But with a high school kid, you may shape what they want to do for their future life. They may find out what they don't want to do too.
Exactly.
There's a lot of things and a lot of benefits as the world's become smaller in a way. With what we've had on our cellular phones and everything else, I think getting to these kids earlier is an important thing.
Yeah, and so I think that internship program was just an offshoot of this emphasis on what the OK Career Guide, ICAP, these different programs that we're working through with Career Tech and Higher Ed, State Department of Ed on how can we help our kids kind of be thinking not only when they get their diplomas, they walk across that stage, that they already kind of have an idea of, man, I can't wait to go do this and get into that.
Yeah. All right. This one's a question, and it's interesting because I think your kids are all over the board, right? You got one that's 16, 17, right? And the one that's newborn.
6 months.
Yeah, so that's a wide range of kids. How do you balance the work-home life? And I know you've probably gotten good at that over the years, but it may be a newer challenge now. And I know from experience it's so important to be able to balance that because they often say happy wife, happy life. I think happy spouse, happy life.
Yes.
If I'm happy, my wife's happy, I'm happy. And that also affects your job. You need a safe place to go home to every day.
Well, and that's something I talked to this board about. There's no secrets. I've got a 16-year-old junior, going to be a junior, and will be a 7-month-old here in 2 weeks, and everything in between. So I have 4 children. And my wife is very active in her position, her career, and I'm active in my career. And I just said, listen, I've got these children that I want to be their dad and want to be able to help with in the evenings and take them to school. And I think actually the answer was great, is that we actually think that's a positive for our superintendent to have kids that are in every level of the school district and will be in every level of the school district for the next few decades.
Right.
So
they know where to file their complaint.
Yes, yes, they do. Yes, they do. So in the evenings, there's always things that happen. My wife's been great on, hey, if you need to take that phone call, let's get it done. Usually, and I've got a great team around me with directors and principals that I think all understand that, hey, if I don't get back to you right away, unless your school's on fire, I will get you back after either bath time or bedtime.
Right.
So everyone's been really understanding about it. But it's also, June. So we'll see when August and September roll around how we're doing.
We'll talk to you then. No. We'll talk to your wife then.
Yeah, talk to her.
And your kids.
Yes.
So, and that has to be interesting too. And I know there's a lot of parents that have kids that are, they're teachers and they have kids in school, or coaches have kids in school. Mm-hmm. But as a superintendent, having your kids in the school system, especially too at the age they understand things, it's not just regular, I think, come home, dinner talk, here's what went on at school. Is that kind of a different type conversation? You've been in an administrator role for a couple of years now. Now you're going to be the superintendent. So
right.
Is it different from when you're a principal or teacher when you get that?
So my kids are used to us just growing up around education, that if you had a parent or a grandparent or uncle aunt that were a teacher, when they started talking to school, you just filtered that out. Now instead of me coming home and saying, I just wish that superintendent and administration would have just done this, or that, now I'm like, oh man, I probably should have done this, or that.
Right.
And second guessing in hindsight. But no, I think it's really great for them. I think they're building some critical thinking skills, relationship skills on how to deal, in tough situations or difficult situations. Obviously, they're not privy to all the, top secret stuff or personnel matters, but they do know that you have some difficult situations you deal with in your job, but also you have some very rewarding situations and moments as well.
Do they ever say, Dad, I wish you'd do this?
My daughter, who now is she's active in cross country, she's like, I really wish you would get that indoor facility built so I don't have to run out in the sun. I was well, that's going to come, but we can't rush it.
Right. Well, I know how important family is to you, and I think that leads to the next question. What do you feel like are some of your personal core values, and how does that relate to what you do with Ponca City Public Schools?
Core values, and as that relates to Ponca City Public Schools. Well, I'm a real big believer that for education to work, it's going to be relationships. It's got to come down to relationships. I think one of the stories I like to tell is this exercise I went to one time. It was some training. I can't even remember the city, but the speaker got up and said, I want you to list off or just write down the the first 5 people that come to mind that made an impact in your life. And so, we did this activity, and he said, okay, I bet the first top 3 is probably mom or dad, or another relative. And he said, I bet you have a teacher or 2 or maybe even 3 in there that you remember made a difference in your life. And just really the whole education framework is around relationships. I can't tell you what I did in my senior English class, maybe a project or 2, but I can tell you how that teacher made me feel.
Right.
And I can tell you how my first grade teacher made me feel and second grade teacher made me feel. And the ones that really made a profound impact on me are the ones that I can remember standing out, caring, either had high expectations or saw something in me that I didn't see.
You probably still stay in contact with some of them too, right?
Absolutely, I do, yeah. Some of them say, I can't believe you're a superintendent. I thought we taught you better than that, but or I went to the dark side. But, I think that's one of the big things. And, I think the credit to my career is just every person I've met, there's a relationship to be had there, and whether we may not agree on everything, we may see things differently through a different political lens. But at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that, we're all human beings. We're prone to mistakes. How do we deal with those mistakes? How do we treat one another?
And how do we put the kids first?
Absolutely. So I think that's the big foundational piece that I'm going to carry on at the start of school year and talk to our principals, teachers about is, it's really relationships and what we're trying to do in this community.
Adam Leaming with us, and I've got a couple more. First off, and this is kind of the broad, typical question, what do you envision for the future of Ponca City Public Schools now that you are leading the ship?
Well, I'm not going to be bashful and say my goal is going to be we're going to be the top public school in the state of Oklahoma. With some of the things that have happened this past year at the legislature, school choice now is more prevalent than ever. So we, as a district, are going to operate on why we need to be the number one choice in this community. And I'm going to shoot for the state, why we're the best choice in the state of Oklahoma, that you should send your kids and have them graduate with a diploma that says Ponca City Wildcats on it. Okay. So that is what we're going to operate out of.
All right. Now, here's the next question. Always good to say it, but what steps do you do to secure that can become a possibility?
So right now, what we're doing with our leadership teams is we're kind of breaking this down into small, digestible chunks. Right now, I think we're looking at how are we going to improve our academics with some of our rigor in the classrooms. I think another key component of that is our extracurricular participation and what kind of products we're putting out on the field, or court, or mat, or whatever sport we're in. That we are a very I want to be known as a district that hustles, works hard, plays hard, great sportsmanship, and that when people, visiting teams come to Ponca City, they're like, wow, that was 4 quarters of just a grinder. But, I just want that Ponca City mentality that we're a blue-collar community now. We roll up our sleeves and get to work.
I wasn't going to go there here, but now I'll venture into it since you mentioned sports. People don't realize with sports side of things, a lot of times that's the only time that people from other communities are coming to your community.
Right.
So it's really, when you have sports, it's a showcase for your community and its people to those other communities around the state.
Yeah, and so I think that's part of why these bond issues is we want to cast a good impression of what our community values, how our community views, the education system. As people come into our community from other communities, you do cast a judgment. You cast a judgment on the facilities, on is it clean, is it presentable, is it nice, is it accessible, does it work? And if it doesn't, then that's a negative view of Ponca City, and I don't want those negative views. We need to be a positive district with a great public image, and so there's a lot of different things we're going to be able to do to get to be the greatest school district in Oklahoma. I think one of the other things is just we've got to simplify the education process for our parents and students. That there's a lot out there that we have to do, with either through state mandates, state laws, or whatever. But we can help try to minimize that confusion on parents and students, and just get back to the business of school.
And you talk about simplifying for parents, but to kind of go back on the sports side of things, and people come in, when those people come to your community, you never know 5 years down the road, they may have a kid that wants to be a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
They may have a friend that's wanting to move to Oklahoma, and they're a teacher, and they want to find a place to work.
Yeah.
So those impressions that you make, it goes back to the recruiting side of things, because even though we're all working together as a state for the betterment of our kids, at the same time, we are competing against other districts to find the best teachers.
Well, you are absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, we are always competing. And that's why I think with school choice now out and about, that we've got to be the best one. There's not an option anymore just to sit back and think, oh, they'll come to us. We've got to be aggressive in what we have for our facilities, what we have in the way of compensation, what we have in the way of culture for our employees, the expectations we have on our students, the community embracing education as a whole. I mean, it's a whole community-wide wraparound effort to make your schools shine. But we are internally, our team's going to be working on how do we help that community wrap around us and propel us.
Yeah. All right. So very last thing, I think it's the most important thing with what we see nationally, what we see statewide, locally. I want to give you the podium, let you look into the camera, which we've been doing a lot, but I want to give this time to you. I want you to look in and tell the parents out there, Ponca City Public School students, the key things that they need to know. What are the key things that the parents need to know about Adam Leaming and his leadership now with Ponca City Public Schools? It's on you.
So if I'm just addressing the parents, as a parent myself, I guess I would say that your school district is here to, obviously, number one, create a safe environment for your student to be welcome into each and every day. We want to put the best teacher in front of each and every child. That's a goal of mine, is that our teachers are top-notch, phenomenal. Our district will continue to reinvest in our teachers through professional development, different growth opportunities, so that they have the most up-to-date teaching methods, strategies to make sure that your child has the best education possible. Our district's commitment also is to make sure that your child is well equipped for this future society, whether that's technology skills, working in a great, clean environment. And we just really wanted to make sure that parents know that your children's education matters, and that we're here for you. We are definitely a family, so if there are concerns or questions, that I hope that you find that our either administration, our faculty, even myself, are open to hearing those concerns, seeing those concerns, and being open to, if there's a reason why we have to do that, being open and receptive to okay, that makes sense, if we have to disagree on a situation by chance. So I really appreciate this opportunity to talk. I'm very flattered and honored to be the superintendent of the Ponca City Public Schools. I mean, it's a district that's been around for over 120 years. That does not that weighs heavy on me. That there's been some great individuals that have sat in this seat, maybe not in this studio, but as the superintendent of this school district, and some great alumni that have graduated from this school. And my hope is that we just take it to that whole next level and make the alumni base very proud of what Ponca City Public Schools can do in the future.
See, and I would say address the kids. I don't know if the kids will make it to the end of the interview, right?
That's true.
But I mean, ultimately, the parents, it's important for them to know. But for the kids, I mean, I think it's briefly you can say give them the best school experience possible.
Oh, yeah, and that's exactly. I mean, we want them to have every experience that they can possibly have. So that's why I said we were looking at different opportunities on how we can strengthen local partnerships. We had a great deal with City Arts this past fall where students were able to go through an immersive live art exhibit, which is only usually available for students in Tulsa and Oklahoma City markets. And to be able to bring that to a rural market like Ponca City and to do that, those are the things that we want to do. When our baseball stadium and softball stadium get finished, we've gotten commitments from a few universities to host a home and home with rival universities, and it'd be really neat to have a doubleheader with Poe High followed by a university game. So to get our college students interacting with our high school students, I think we're just looking for opportunities to strengthen and bolster our district.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Excited to see what the future holds. We'll be talking, I'm sure, a lot more. And congratulations on becoming the superintendent.
Well, thanks,
and best of luck. And know you'll do your best to make sure these kids have a great experience and make sure these parents know that their kids are going to have that great experience with Ponca City Public Schools.
We hope so. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I want to say thanks to Chris Adams as well for helping us out here with our Wildcat monthly. It's a little hard because I'm so used to Coach's Corner, but appreciate everybody involved. Jordan Woodruff saying so long, and until next time, go Cats.